Welcome to another Small Farms Updates. And we're gonna get started with Matt DeJong. We have Matt here who's been farming with him, his wife, his family on 40 acres up in Merrillville, Indiana. And he grew up in a family farm in Illinois. And that kind of changed, and he'll kind of go over a little bit of his journey into how he ended up in Merrillville. He does rotational grazing with cattle and pumpkin production. He also does seasonal pumpkins, flowers, and meal planning with veggies, beef, pork, lamb, and eggs. And also is just like a great household name in that area and has a great farm stand. And it's great to see his family out and about. So I'm just gonna have Matt start sharing his screen and talk about his journey on no-till and other practices.
Well, thanks, Tanvi, and thanks for everyone for showing up, allowing me to share a little bit about our farm and hopefully inspire a few people, whether in farming or gardening. Um, so, when I was preparing for this a little bit and another speech I gave down in Illinois, um, I found some photographs that are from quite a few years ago, and so I thought, let's just go take a trip down memory lane and see what we used to do, where I grew up, and what type of farming. Because there are so many different types of farms. We tend to think of farming in the Midwest as corn and beans, maybe a little bit of wheat, some cattle, perhaps, um, or we think of there's not a lot of large, at least up north here. There's not a lot of large vegetable farms, and so I am a fourth generation farmer in this area, not necessarily Indiana, Illinois, or I should say Indiana, Illinois. My great grandpa would farm in Munster. We moved across the border into Lansing, Illinois. If you're familiar with that, it's a south suburb of Chicago. And we had a farm in DeMott. We had a farm in Dyer, Indiana. And over the generations, that ground might change. But essentially, we were a small truck garden farm. We hauled produce into what was the South Water Market, moved to Chicago International Produce Market. And in the 80s, we kind of morphed and became spinach uh, baggers, I guess, spinach packagers. And we raised anywhere between 50 and 100 acres of spinach, about 100 acres of radishes, 50 or so, 40, 50 acres of green onions, scallions, I guess they're more accurately called, and miscellaneous other vegetables. So, standard truck gardening farm. Um, so this is a picture just to show you what we used to do. We used to harvest the spinach right out in the field, machine harvest it. This one's dating quite far back, and the bottom right. That's what we used to do. We used to ship quite a few cases of spinach every week. Chicagoland area, some north, some south. So that's my background up until 2015. So I just want to show you. It was a standard farm, um, high tillage, and there's a picture of the lettuce we used to raise. Went to farmers markets, but I share that same picture of the exact same field, slightly different angle. But you can see one of the primary concerns you always have with market farming is that it's it's a high tillage. At least that's how we were brought up. It's a high tillage environment, and you can see that's after a major rain event. There's even a worse picture that you can't see to the right. But standard looking at that, you see a lot of ponding, puddling, and there's very poor water infiltration because there's a hard pan underneath there. But for most small seeded vegetables, the root zone is in the top 6 inches, so we don't really worry about it too much if you're just looking at production. But as time goes on, this ground has been tilled multiple times. And when I mean tilled, it's moldboard plowed and then beat to pieces with a rototiller or a power harrow. And you end up over about, high school in the mid 90s. So by the early 2000s, we were seeing a lot of disease issues, a lot of, even on this ground here, you'll see some subsoil start to poke up when you're plowing. And you end up with quite a few resource concerns. You have some, wind erosion. This particular soil type, I should have prefaced that, is a sandy loam. We also had some fields that were a beach sand, kind of like Lake Michigan bottom. And a mile away, we farmed ground that was clay. But this particular ground is a fine sandy loam. And you don't realize how much erosion is happening, how much soil loss you have when you're plowing and disking all the time. And we were starting to see significant soil health problems coming into the farm just because the soil health wasn't there. You end up with disease issues. You end up with certain pest problems that you can't control, and specifically white mold, blue mold on spinach, and rhizoctonia. So this would be 2005. And to back the train up a little bit, sandy loam soil, we have been raising cover crops on this soil for years. When I say cover crops, it's cereal rye. We understood wind erosion. We didn't understand some of the other issues that comes from tillage, but we planted cereal rye, quite a bit of it, combined our own, used our own seed. And so we would plant strips for wind erosion. But in 2005, the farm transitioned to myself as a minority shareholder, and we began planting multi-species mixes. So for the last 20 years, I've been experimenting with different mixes, one for nitrogen, but here on the right-hand side, it's the same picture. One is after flail mowing, but it's hairy vetch, annual rye, and there should be some clover in there. There should be cereal rye in there as well, but you can really see what took over that year. And that's the level of mulch that we left behind. And we would plant other species into there after, warm season, sorghum Sudan, flail mow, attempting to replenish what had been lost over the decades of high tillage. And we were starting to make significant strides. The amazing part about, planting cover crops, and you start being really dedicated in your rotations, is that your soil health improves, even if you're still tilling, and our disease levels started to go down. Not rhizoctonia. Rhizoctonia is not, that's a difficult one, but the other leaf diseases we started to move away from. But to share one of my mistakes is, given my background, one of the reasons why I shared it is, I grew up moldboard plowing. And when you're a teenager, moldboard plowing, you get out of that tractor and there's this wonderful smell behind you. That's actually the smell of death of the soil. But back then we all thought of it as this wonderful smell, and we loved plowing. And so in 2015, we moved to this property, and this is a particular ridge that should never have been plowed, but I'm not proud of this one. But it was just a weedy mess when we bought it. And so I mowed it down, and here I am moldboard plowing it. Some of the effects of this tillage event you can see yet today. But I share that as part of the journey because I still don't have all the pieces in my mind at this time how to, put together what I'm actually doing to the soil. I may understand it mechanically as an engineer. I may understand it practically as a farmer, and yet there's still the generations of history that you are supposed to plow under in order to have a seed bed in order to plant. And so I still have that plow. It has a beautiful coat of green paint on the mold boards, and it makes a nice picture ornament. But it's sitting in the corner. Hopefully, never use it again. Now that I understand more as the journey progresses. You can see in the background too. We at that point in time we just had some cows and we were making hay. We made our own hay off this farm. And today we don't make any hay on this farm. Everything is rotationally grazed. The hay field is coming back in wonderful multi-species. It's no longer a single species fertilized. This is still when we fertilized the hay. And since we've taken that hay field and stopped putting fertilizer on, we just about killed it. But you can see the soil food web is coming back. The species, I mean, even the grass is green without any fertilizer, so it can be done. Yeah. Oh, and then we started in the right of that picture. We started. One of the reasons why we got cows in the first place is because I wanted to create our own on-farm fertility. So that small little compost pile is our first effort. We had 3 cows at the time, and that's our first compost pile. Today, where those kids are standing is covered. We have compost piles. We haul in leaves from the town, and I'll show a picture of that later, but that pile is infinitely larger than what you see there. So we are at the point now where we can utilize our own fertility that's generated on the farm. We take in wood chips that we use as bedding for the cows and leaves that we're mixing in with the wood chips to use as bedding. And we're mixing those leaves back with the heavily manure-based bedding pack and creating our own on-farm compost. So this is, we used to plant this at the old farm in Lansing. It's just a simple mix of cereal rye and hairy vetch. This was, there was no variety. I think this was just a regular variety, not standard, not stated bag of rye. I don't remember the seeding rates, but we had a pretty good growth that year. Excuse me. And so this is something that we started experimenting with. We used to flail mow it all down and then till it under. And as the journey progresses and we start learning more and more about the soil, we're trying to not till the soil as much as possible. So at least a couple years out of the rotation. We have a 3-year rotation on pumpkins. 1 year maybe sweet corn or a warm season like sorghum Sudan grass, or pearl millet. And then, so the alternate 2 years during the summertime will be that mix, sorghum Sudan, possibly some cowpeas, and that's for grazing. So we graze every acre. And then the 3rd year is back into pumpkins. So here's the year after pumpkins. We went in after pumpkins, we planted cereal rye, and we drilled in a little bit of hairy vetch. And so the next spring we said, well, why would we bother tilling this? We had a beautiful stand of clover that somehow came into the cereal rye. So there's some red medium clover underneath there as well. And so we planted directly into that. That's a Tar River. I think it's a 5-foot drill, food plot drill. Gentleman planting that is a friend of mine. That's his rig, plant food plots for deer, and he came and generously helped me drill because I do not own a no-till drill. And we were wondering how it would go. So the planter drilled right into it. It rolled it. We own a roller crimper. And so about a week after this was planted, we went and roller crimped this. And we had a very nice stand of sorghum Sudan. So we did not do a multi-species there, but we didn't have to. Underneath the canopy is a healthy stand of medium red clover, some, I'm not even sure what grasses, but there's some annual grasses, maybe perennials. So we just roller crimped it and left it. Um, so here's a picture of the planter. Um, but you can see I'm not completely no-till yet. We're still experimenting with what works for us. So across the way is I'm guessing that's sweet corn. Yeah, it's sweet corn. Um, our plant, one of the, I don't have a picture of it, but one of the drawbacks of older technology planting is that we do not have no-till planter. As of today, well, as of last week, we now have a no-till planter that we will be able to no-till our sweet corn and pumpkins, and so we're super excited about that and have the opportunity to experiment with those crops. So this is after crimping. Um, you can see there's some weed pressure that comes in. That is from bale grazing hay with the cows the previous winter, and that every ring um, left some weed pressure. But very soon after that, uh, you don't see it anymore. Sorghum grows very fast and choked that out. And after multiple grazings, there was very little of that left. So you can kind of see the progression. You got the sweet corn in the background. Um, that's we're not a large farm. We raise about an acre, acre and a half of sweet corn, 2 acres of pumpkins. So definition of a small farm, but you can see the contour of our soil. We have some steeper slopes, and so our concern is to continue tilling. We're going to have same problems as what's happened on previous farms, and so we need to recognize that and stop tilling as much as we can to protect our soil. So this is the same field in the fall. We drilled cereal rye straight into that. We did not get the fourth grazing off of it. We opted to leave as much as we could as residue. Um, we had some bare spots starting to come in from the cows. The cows are very hard on vegetation when it's warm out. If there's a water tub nearby, they can do some stamping. So you see some bare spots coming in. So we opted to leave the rest as residue to um, help keep the soil covered. And in retrospect, I probably could have grazed it. That this came in so nice and thick, but we were at the near end of the year, and we decided just to drill straight into it. So on the other side of the farm, so that's the cow side and the rotation with the pumpkin side. Um, this is something else that we've been experimenting with for, excuse me, quite a few years. Um, we bought a tarp about 7 years ago, but like a typical conventional vegetable slash, when I say conventional, I mean conventional tillage. We used the tarp after tilling to try and mimic an herbicide. So we weren't quite thinking through the whole process yet. And here I just want to give a shout out to Dan Perkins down at DeMott for helping me through, see some other ways to use this tarp and just complete the whole process so that we not only use the tarp to kill weeds, but we no longer till, and we use mulch to, control moisture, control weeds, and um, here we are planting right into it. So there are some of my kids um, unfurling the tarp over a section of our lawn because this year we needed more ground, so some of our lawn became our sunflower patch. So that sunflower patch is covered with um, a mixture of compost mixed with leaves. So you see in the bottom, there's a compost that we purchase, and then we get leaves from the town of Winfield, and those leaves are mixed together with the compost. So with my bucket, I put in 3 scoops of leaves and 1 scoop of compost, and then I run it out through a manure spreader and put it on nice and thick, and then we transplanted Those sunflowers are actually transplanted, because we used to transplant sunflowers directly into tilled ground. Um, this year we'll be direct seeding them. It's just what we're used to and how we transition.
Matt, I have a
So
quick question.
sure.
What was the reasoning for your ratio of 3 parts leaves to 1 part compost?
Essentially, I was trying to lower the cost of. So we did another garden plot, and we'll look at that later. That was straight compost, and the cost of doing a 100 foot by 24 foot tarp was, I think, about $500 to $700, and it was just cost prohibitive. And I looked at what we were planting here, and sunflowers is not something that needs very high fertility. So having extra leaves, even if I lose a little nitrogen, sunflowers do not need much. And essentially, I was trying to. I'm a good Dutchman, but also practically, I know that the crop that I'm planting there can handle that. If I was planting any other vegetables, I would not recommend it. In fact, we are currently composting those leaves in the same ratio, trying to break down the leaves to make it a little easier to plant into. Or transplanting is fine for a mixture like this, but if you were trying to direct seed anything into, it would not work. And I'll go through that in the next little bit. But I just wanted to share this first, and you can see how the sunflowers responded. It's quite obvious that they had no lack of fertility, and so you can see the mulch. We pulled zero weeds. Well, maybe there was one weed we pulled. I'm not sure if I have it. Nope, I don't have another picture. But on the left side where the sunflowers are blooming, the tarp was stored right next to it. You can kind of see where it's stored in the right picture for the winter. And I think there was one weed that escaped the tarp. We didn't overlap right. And so that is literally how many weeds we had here. And we sold a lot of sunflowers out of a 24 by 70 foot plot. So very happy with the results. And then in the right, that's what it looked like in January. There's garlic growing up in there. So yeah, so that will be snapdragons, garlic, possibly some long-term herbs like parsley, and who knows what my wife decides to put in there. But so this is what you do when you don't have a whole lot of tillable ground. I put in quotes tillable ground. Um, this is what we do. We just cover a portion of our lawn.
And we have a
So
question about that. Um,
sure.
so many of our small scale growers utilize silage tarps as a weed prevention and soil health strategy, similarly to you. Can you share how long you left your tarp on and when you took it off?
Sure. So this one here was only on for, I had the dates in my head. I lost it, but maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It was not on as long as what I normally would have, but it was warmer out when we did it. We had good kill of the grass. There weren't a whole lot of weeds that didn't, like thistles that wouldn't die out of a lawn, um, which was amazing because I don't put any chemicals in my lawn. My kids run around and pick dandelions, so dandelions would be about the biggest weed pest you would estimate would be in this plot, but there weren't. However, if you look in the right picture in the far left of that picture, there was a thistle growing underneath there. We left it there all summer, and that thistle was not dead in November. Thistles are very persistent buggers, and so we left it all winter. So we'll see. This one here, if we transition to this picture, this tarp was put on. So in the right picture, these pictures are reversed. They're mirror images. So on the right side, you're looking at this, the beginning stages of what you see on the left side of the left picture. But that tarp was put on all winter. And we just put it on there and left it all winter and took it off in March and amended it to, well, it's got to be in April we took it off. It was on there for quite a while. The benefit of it was we killed everything but yellow, was it yellow nutsedge, or if I got the term right, but basically a sedge plant survived. Thistles did not. And then we covered it with, this is the one that we covered with straight compost. It's 2 inches thick. And then we transplanted beets and kohlrabi, and the left two beds were direct seeded carrots for the fun of it. So before I used to farm sandy loam soil, we could grow a 15-inch carrot without even trying. This is a, boy, some of our ground, I guess you would call a silty clay loam, and this particular is probably silty clay loam, but we have other parts of our farm that is probably 90% silt. There's not a whole lot of anything else in it, especially on the highly eroded slopes. It's silt, but there's no fertility to it. So anyway, this is a silty clay loam, which, is already going to be hard to raise carrots. And of course, me being stubborn, I just want to try something and see if it works. So essentially, I would recommend probably 2 to 3 months with the tarp, longer if you can afford it, just because of certain weed pressure you might have. After we, before we plant, if there's any disturbance of the soil, probably a minimum of 3 weeks, just to kill any annual weeds that might be growing. But I'm by no means an expert on it.
No, it's great that you're sharing the experience. And then we had another question just to clarify. So Ellie asked, that 6 to 7 weeks that you had the sunflower patch, was that to kill off uh the the tarp? Was that used to kill off the sod initially, or was that after initial soil prep?
We did no soil prep on this one. We just rolled the tarp out, sandbagged it, and left it there for about 7 weeks. And then if you see in this picture, that's essentially how it looked afterwards. There was a lot more sod on it. It looked like a brown sod, and the grass was dead. Nothing came through except for that one grass plant that survived on the corner of the tarp.
Very cool. Thanks.
So one of the things, so you can just see in these pictures, you can see how that same plot, beets and kohlrabi, how they responded. We did put some additional fertility on the beets and a little bit on the kohlrabi. Nothing was applied to the carrots. The beets, by the time they were done, were starting to run out of nitrogen. So anybody who's doing this might want to think about a little supplementation with some nitrogen. The only thing we supplemented with was, and I don't remember how many pounds we put per foot, but was poultry crumbles. So very little of NP and K, because I knew we've grown beets for, in the old farm for years. I know how hungry they are. And so we knew we need some sort of supplementation. So that's why we did it on the beets. Overall, huge success on the beets. If you're harvesting just the bulb, you probably don't need the nitrogen, which is why we didn't really worry about it. But if you're bunching, we used to ship a lot of bunched beets to Super Value, and it used to be Dominic's. Now it's Safeway, or maybe they're even out of the Midwest now. But basically, what would be a chain store? You got Hy-Vee, Strax was one. But anyway, we shipped a lot of bunched beets, and so then the tops become imperative that you keep the tops in perfect green order. Not so much worried about it when we're just doing the bulbs, but you could see they were just running out of nitrogen as we were coming up to harvest. But I wanted to show in the middle, in the right picture, one of the things we're going to work very hard on is purchasing tarps that are just single bed width. You can see most small farmers are running a 30-inch bed top. We're still running a standard 6-foot bed. And the reason for that is we just have all the equipment from the old farm. that's all 6 foot. So we make do with what we have, and we can plant it very quickly. And so we stuck with the 6 foot bed top. So our plan is to get tarps that are 6 foot wide. And you can see we harvested the kohlrabi. So the kohlrabi's out first. Most tarps are that standard tarps are like 24 or larger in width. Make it very difficult to just, if you had any weed pressure, and we did not in the kohlrabi, if you had any weed pressure to try and spend 3 weeks to try and choke out any annual weeds. So our plan is to have that tool in the tool belt um, to try and choke out any weeds of the single bed so we can flip beds faster. So all we did here was we took a wheelbarrow because we don't have a tool to get down and just put a little bit of compost, but we put another ½ inch of compost down, if that, raked it, and planted carrots right into it. Since we had so much fun planting carrots in those other 2 beds, we planted a third bed of carrots, and then I think we planted 2 more later on. I don't know why, but I guess we just like carrots that much. But this bed was very easy, the wheelbarrow to bring the compost down, rake it out, and then we planted right into it with our Planet Junior planter.
So we have a couple questions about that part of the garden. So let's see. What are your main strategies for insect pest management?
Main strategies. Well, mostly it's, I guess I would term the conventional organic approach. We use organic pesticides. The only one we really had to spray was um, well, we use dipel, so BT formulation on the kohlrabi. I think we sprayed the beets too at the same time. We did use on our onions. We use pyganic, and certain times of year we will use an insect netting. But we find ourselves getting so busy with so many different parts of the farm that we just run out of manpower to get all that done. So our main strategy is just we own a sprayer, and I can spray 5 beds at a time if I need to, and or 1 bed, and we use organic pesticides, just mainly those two.
Gotcha.
So if that answers that question,
Yeah.
moving on. Okay. So this year, on the left, if you remember from my history from the very beginning, we started bagging spinach again this year. The wonderful thing is, I am no longer dealing with salesmen who are sitting in New Jersey or salesmen that are sitting in Arizona or what have you, trying to convince them to buy local. Region Roots has been a tremendous help in getting this started again, and we're having a blast. And so this is our spinach this year that we raised this fall, and we started bagging spinach again. So that's super exciting for us on the farm. And the picture on the right, and while we're trying not to till, it's really hard when you pull carrots. So we bought basically it's a big broad fork that allows us to loosen the soil without flipping it. And so clay carrots, by my sand standards, they're not very good. They taste amazing, and I don't expect to be able to get any deeper or any longer carrots out of our, a no-till system. But while there's a few, corkscrewed carrots in there, a couple forks here and there, I was pleasantly surprised how straight and how uniform they were for being a no-till carrot. I would also like to mention that weed pressure in these carrots was quite low. Can't remember if it was 3 or 4 kids for an hour and a half. Those 10 rows, they had to thin them because we had to plant a junior, so they were a little thick when I planted them. And you can see some of the weed pressure. There's looks like a tree, a cottonwood, and then maybe a dandelion of sorts, and there's a few weeds that started to come in at the end. Um, but overall, very impressed with how the carrots grew, how they produced, how they netted per foot. Um, so yeah, it was a good overall experience with the spring planted carrots and the summer planted carrots, and then our fall planted carrots. We screwed up and did not water enough, so there were not very many late carrots to be harvested. Because that's one of the drawbacks of the system is that that compost dries out so fast, and you need a lot of water to maintain that. Don't know. Oh, I don't have a picture of it, but if anybody's interested, look up Sumi, Sumi. That's our irrigation system that we're using now. One of the best soaker hoses that I've found. It's a 2-inch soaker hose. You need a lot of water to do it, but you can get a lot watered evenly, finely. Um, it's just a beautiful system. So Sumi soaker hose. So I'm probably going a little bit long, but I just want to finish with one of our goals. You know, over my lifetime now, I've gone from being a boy. I love plowing. I love the smell. It's it's very nostalgic if you do till to bring that back from my teenage years. Um, to the years where I attended at U of I. So once I became a minority shareholder in the old farm, I really wanted to understand what's going on in the soil because I knew we had a problem. We had no, I just didn't understand it. I was an engineer by degree. I took a few ag courses, very fascinated with plant science, soil science specifically. And I thought the answer had to be somewhere in the soil. So somehow, and I still don't know how they let me in, but the U of I had an online master's program that they let me into, and very wonderful experience. But even back then, so that's 2011, 2012, even back then, we were still thinking in terms of physical and chemical nature of the soil. And a lot of my that courses that I took there were all about soil fertility, soil chemistry, and from my engineering background, I understand the physical, what we're actually doing to the soil, but those pieces were not together yet. And so I know we're a little past it, there, but I just want to take a moment to recognize someone who very instrumental to me understanding as much as little, perhaps, as what I do about the soil, and that's Dr. Elaine Ingham. She, her videos and her coursework were just amazing and opening my eyes to seeing that there's a third component to the soil, and that's the biological. And the biological is by far the most important, in my mind, to a soil that's considered healthy. And recognizing that she has no longer with us, and I am just deeply grateful to her and her contribution to my knowledge. And that's kind of been the piece of the puzzle that's been lurking in the back of my mind. How do we protect the soil health? How do we protect the microbiology, the fungi, to produce healthy crops? Because after all, we eat the healthy crops, but it's the health of that crops is based on what's happening underneath the soil. And so I share on the left-hand side, this is 25 years at least of no-till hay, and then it's now pasture this will be year 5. You can see the depth of that soil. If it shows up in your screen, I don't know. This part of the country, we have fragipan that's about 2 feet to 22 inches, depending on your soil probe you'll hit. That's almost impermeable. Nothing goes through it very well except for an excavator. But that 2 feet above that, you can see the roots of this pasture just tunneling right down through it. The carbon part of it is, going almost, I bet you 15 inches down. It's just a beautiful deep soil, and one that you would not expect in this part of the country. You probably expect it more in Western Illinois or somewhere where there's some much deeper soils. Uh, so the other side of it is the spade that we took, Tanvi, when you were here. We dug underneath that carrot bed and took a look at what our soil looked like. 9 years prior to that, we mowed plowed it because the previous owner had just his garden full of weeds and didn't know what to do with weeds. So, good conventional tillage guy, we plowed it. And so you can see, you know, you can see some of the platy structure yet that it definitely had some tillage events in recent history. But we're very, very happy to see some microaggregates starting to form. And the soil performed very well underneath management this year. And so we're excited for the future and how it's going to perform going forward. So I believe that is all I have prepared for remarks today. If there's any other questions, would you like me to stay sharing in case we need to look at pictures? Or you want me to turn it back over to you?
Can. Yeah, let's leave you sharing just for a little longer. We had a question from Ellie that maybe we can talk about real quick. Have you seen more people in your area transitioning in a similar way that you have, either through consequence of you doing that or just like as you've been there, have you noticed that there's a change in farmers around you doing the same?
I would say on the large scale, the opposite is occurring. Um, Illinois has gone to more and more tillage. I went to school at Dordt College, now University of Northwest Iowa. When we left there, they had nice patch of cereal rye. Uh, I went back there, and what was somewhat no-till in some areas is now completely tilled, and there's no green at all. You come across Illinois, there's a lot more tillage running. And Indiana, thankfully, we are still no-tilling, quite a few of us, but very few cover crops. So on the large scale, I would say no. And one of the issues is trying to convince them of the benefits of something they won't see the benefit for 10 years, perhaps. Um, and they're in their mid 50s, and they say, "What's the point?" Especially around our area, we have a lot of housing moving in. The ground value is going up, not for farming, but for construction. And so that's a very difficult sell on the large scale. And I see us going backwards, and that concerns me deeply. Um, but on the small scale, we've been doing tours now for the last few years, and I would say on the small scale, and the garden scale, even large garden scale, we see very interested parties in trying to um, utilize some of these methods. And I would say these not all these methods might translate to your context either, but I'm willing to help anybody who wants to try and transition, and I know others are in this size agriculture to try and transition even their garden. My son's doing it. My sister-in-law is doing it. Um, got a few neighbors who are interested but haven't pulled the plug yet. They're just content running that rototiller. And I say, the older I get, I don't want to pull weeds. So even from a practical standpoint, this just looking at it from that angle, it's a whole lot easier on the back as we get older, and let alone the long term effects. So I would say on the small scale, there's a lot of interest in how to do this. Um, some from the soil health, some from the practical side of it. And I don't care which side you're coming from, but anyway, we can stop tilling and work smarter with creation, not harder, is a win win for everyone, including what we leave behind, which is the soil. So, yeah, on the small side, looking good. Large scale, there's a couple guys who are planting cover crops and doing a very good job no tilling with cover crops. And I would just say the next step then is we need to integrate some animals.
That's a really good point. Would you say maybe that at least for the small scale, um, like does monetary incentives help to motivate people to change, or do you think it's something more cultural? What would be some motivators for small scale people to transition more, either through your experience or what you hear from people?
Well, number one, I would say it's cultural. We need to affect change with education. um, and that's one of the reasons why I volunteer our farm is a as a spot for people to come out and take a look and maybe learn on a field day. Just hope to be able to affect that change because culturally, you can see my 4 years, 4 generations, sorry, of farming background. It's hard to break that habit. Everybody tills. That's what you do in the spring. You get out in May or April and you get the rototiller out. You rototill it a few times. Maybe you do put compost on, but everything has to be beat to fine um, powder, and that's just what we've grown up with. And I think the education side of it's huge. Now, I do think that having some of these practices are quite expensive to start, and having that monetary hurdle can be too much for someone on a small scale to get started. And so I do think there's some benefit to incentivizing some of these practices to start changing people's minds that get over the hurdle of wanting to have that fun of taking the rototiller out and trying something different. Because tarps are not cheap. Compost is definitely, a big piece of the puzzle, and whatever mulch you're using is a big piece of the puzzle. Um, so I think that's a hurdle that could use some at least short term incentives until we get a bigger swing in people's, I guess, cultural backgrounds.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that insight. I think that's really valuable. And um, it was interesting hearing you talk about your specific type of soil because the Great Lakes region does have a lot different composition that we some of us in the southernmore part deal with too. So um, lot of different conservation practices that you got going on, and it's an ongoing experiment. So your journey is so great to hear. Um, yeah. And does anyone else have any questions for Matt? If you do, just post them in the chat or raise your hand or whatever. But yeah, Ellie says you're creating a new experience of nostalgia for the next generation of living soil. So maybe not the smell, but a different type of smell or a different aroma.
Well, I would just like to add I grew up on a conventional farm. You didn't go out into the field and pick produce and eat it right in the field. So my kids are growing up. We don't sell peas. Funny story, we don't sell peas, but I plant 1,200-foot rows of peas every year. And that's my kids. They go out there and they graze cherry tomatoes, peas, green beans. And that's the experience I wanted to cultivate when we bought this farm. It really wasn't intended necessarily to be what we are today. Um, I'm so glad it came to be, but just the experience of the kids, and that's why I love. We had 4-H group out last year. Just wonderful experience, and seeing my kids out there just grazing. I want that to be the experience that they take to the next generation.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Have you applied for Equip at all or worked with that kind
Yep,
of program?
we did for the first time this year um, because, frankly, we do need to extend our season a little bit. So there's some other things we applied for, and we'll see what happens there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks for presenting and just sharing your journey. I loved listening to you, and maybe we could yeah, if people are in that area, they should come and check you out.
Yep, all summer long, we offer your protein needs and we offer your vegetable needs. You can make whatever you want. We have people that stop and shop, and they get everything but your salt and pepper here. So um, it's
There
fun to
you
be part of.
go. Is Facebook the best place to contact you?
At this point, yes, through Facebook at DeJong Farm.
All right. Cool. I'll have you stop sharing and then we'll get on to our things. Feel free to stick around and hear our conservation updates. Um, so I'm gonna share my screen here and we've got yeah, our updates and events. So this is a picture of us out learning and training to do on-site visits with other small farm conservationists from all over Indiana. Um, we learned a lot, even though the snow was covering a lot of the ground, but um, yeah, it was a good time. So in the northern region where I'm at, I've been doing a few site visits and just talking and reaching out to people. So I did one recently in Lake County where we talked through someone who was interested in just learning all the different opportunities that EQIP and NRCS could possibly offer. And so, excuse me, a lot of potential up there in that region. And then the picture that you just saw and the one down below is of us having a programs and CD and CART training, which is Conservation Desktop, and it's a program that NRCS uses to offer how to pull together resources and kind of organize them in the template that works for them to gather information for who applies for EQIP and how that funding gets processed. And basically just very technical know-how of how to do our job. And then just more site visits, and so keep your requests coming. Um, we've had I've done a few other events through Living Farm series, and we have more coming up, but Megan will cover that too.
Hey everybody, it's Megan from the south of the state. Like Tanvi, Ellie, and our partners in the north, with the Great Lakes area, we did a bunch of cart training in Fort Wayne. I've been doing and contacting or being contacted by lots of farmers in the southwest of the state. So that's really exciting because I get to learn this new part of the state. So I've seen farmers in Posey, Warwick, and Vanderburgh counties. We had the Living Farm series at Seton Harvest Farm a couple weeks ago, which was a lovely event. They have both high tunnels and aquaculture, which was excellent to learn about. So it was just a brilliant time to spend with other growers and to spend with the farmers there. I just got back from La Crosse, Wisconsin, where I was presenting at Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference. Had a great time. Saw lots of people I knew, including Katie Rogers from Teeter's Organic Farm, where we'll be having a Living Farm series event in April. So stay tuned for that. And then tomorrow, actually, I'm also presenting at Small Farms Conference through Purdue. So if you haven't signed up for Small Farms Conference yet, I'm sure you can still get a ticket. We'd love to see you there. We'll be there all 3 days with a table. And we'll be talking to growers, networking, getting you signed up for site visits, and talking more about possible financial resources that small scale growers have access to through EQIP and CRP. So next is Ellie.
I don't have a whole lot new to add, but just lots with 2026 programs rollouts and small farms changes. There are a lot of practices that are available through EQIP, and CSP still, so we're getting up to speed on being able to really provide our district conservationists and growers that support, wraparound support, and have upcoming site visits scheduled in Owen, Putnam, and Vigo counties. And just came back from a lovely, very warm vacation in Puerto Rico. Um, and this weekend took the plunge with getting four new feathered friends that me and my son will, or sons, will be starting our backyard flock. So that's a uh, new thing for me to jump in, and I am obsessed as well. I'm really excited. Next. So just an encouragement for our planners on there and soil and water conservation districts that have been involved in past working groups that we still do have some funds set aside through reimbursements that are available through the end of this month. And just really encourage you to start getting out on sites as well and do that whole farm planning and still reach out to us to think about all of the different practices available for either technical or financial assistance as well. We're really prioritizing those existing or current equip applications, but then right after that, we'll be getting out in the field on other farms too. And here is that link to the small farms questionnaire, which is we've been sending that to anyone that comes in, as a request to us, no matter how they come in, just as a great starting point for gathering information pre-site visit to help us be able to assist even better, pull, soil survey maps, etc. So encourage you to send that to anybody who you might want to get us out on farm with. I'll put that link in the chat again. And I think there was just one more. Cover crop packages. We have been about a month delayed for various reasons, but those are being packed as we speak. We have a couple thousand ready that I'm gonna zip up to Byron Seeds right after this and go pick them up. So we'll have some at Small Farms Conference, and then around mid-March, be getting those out all to districts. And because of the overwhelming response, we did have to change and reduce our numbers that we can provide. So it'll be about 50 packets of each of just oats and peas, but we also have info on our website for how to order and pack yourself. And that's a great bonding experience for anybody, is to order a big bulk bag of seeds and pack them up. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some events coming up. And like Megan said, from tomorrow to the 5th, we'll have the Purdue Horticulture and Small Farms Conference in Danville, Indiana. So sign up if you want to attend. You can also just attend for one day. After on Tuesday, there will be a farmer social that will also be held. So check out Nightfall Farms, who will be part of hosting that. Um, March 2nd to April 27th, Purdue Extension has the Urban Farm Signature Program. So if you just Google that, you'll be able to find a way to look at that program and others. So if you're just starting out with farming and want to try to figure out how to know the ins and outs of urban farming, they offer all kinds of information in this like lesson plan every Monday for people in Lake County. Um, and then they also have a different program in Marion County. So a good way to kind of look into what's maybe available in your area. And then March 7th, we have our next Living Farm series, which is on Saturday at Soul Food Project Indy. And that'll be fun, so come out for that. And then we have another event on March 15th for building low tunnels, learning more about season extension of using low tunnels at the DuPont Ulem Farm in Greencastle, Indiana. That'll be fun, a little bit more interactive. And then April 26th, we have our last event for the Living Farm series of the 2025 to 2026 year um, at Teeter Retreat and Organic Farm in Noblesville, Indiana. So that'll be pretty great too. If you have any other events or I guess programs that you want to share with anyone, post them in the chat or unmute yourself at this time, and would love to hear about what's going on and maybe some other people could join with you. Otherwise, our next meeting is back to normal on Wednesday, April 1st at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And we still have to find a topic and a speaker. We're working on that. If you have any suggestions of someone else who could also speak, let us know, always. Otherwise, reach out to us on email, website, Facebook, Instagram, all the means, and join us. Find the recordings of this small farm update on our website as shown here and the link provided.